What's up everybody, JJ here, and welcome to the first episode of the 12 Prints of Christmas. Unlike the Christmas song, this won't be an ever-increasing recursive list. This is going to be a sort of mini-series of 12 separate episodes highlighting different skills and techniques for printing Christmas and holiday 3D prints. As I was compiling a list for my favorite Christmas prints for 2021, I found there were so many different really interesting techniques and skills for some of these prints, and I thought it could be more useful if I gave a little bit more of a deep dive. These won't all be long episodes, I'm trying to keep them under 5 minutes each. Let's go ahead and get started. Episode 1 will be weighted prints. Usually these 3D prints we make are hollow to save plastic. They're lightweight, they're faster to print. You don't need them to be solid for most objects. But sometimes you wish things were heavier. I picked up these stockings at Target for our pets, one for Ada and one for Chance the Napper, and I wanted to get little stocking hangers to hang them on the mantle. But the ones they had at Target I thought were pretty expensive. They were like $10 for a fairly basic one. And so I thought, I had a printer, so I can just print one. So I modeled up this stocking hanger in Blender. The hook prints separately from the body, and then you shove it in there and the friction really holds it in place. It's really not going to fall out. But when you print it hollow like you print most prints, there's not enough mass here to hold it up onto the mantle. So I'm going to be using these steel BBs. These are just steel shot for air guns, and they're really dense and really heavy. You could also use a bunch of other things, whether it's little ball bearings, fishing weights, even sand I think could work. A lot of options. You just want something dense that you can fit inside of the infill. That's another strategy. You're going to want to use special infill for this. I use the grid setting at 5% infill. That leaves these big large cavities that I can stop the print and fill them up with these weights. It's also nice to intentionally stop your print at a special layer. I use right at this beveled edge here because it is a physical edge transition, so if there are any mistakes from pausing it and resuming the print, I would rather it be on a seam like that because it'll kind of hide your imperfections. And when it comes to actually stopping your print, there's two methods, the automatic and the manual way. I am using Klipper firmware, and here are my macros for pausing and resuming the print. I'll have these copied in the description down below and a link to my configuration file if you just want to copy them out of there. But the manual method would be simply staying near your print. Once it gets to the layer you want, you press the macro to pause the print. It moves the print head away and keeps everything heated while you fill in the infill with your weights, and then you can press resume. You should probably use some tweezers to take out any oozing that's oozed from the nozzle while it's waiting on you. That will help some of the imperfections you'll get. But instead of that manual method, you can use an automatic method. Since I know that it's layer 80 where this transition happens, I can simply go into the G code, search for layer 80, and input the pause macro as a new line. So now with the pause macro automatically loaded, it got to this level and then moved the print head to the side. It also keeps the heated bed and hot end at the correct temperature. So now it's time to load these up. I find it's easier just to load them in my hand and then drop them into these little channels. And that's pretty well loaded. I don't need to fully fill them up. Just make sure you don't go over this top layer. And now I'm going to use some tweezers to pull that bit of stringing off the hot end since it's going to be oozing out while you're filling. Then I can go into Klipper, hit the resume macro, and the print will continue on like it did before. If you are still using Marlin firmware on your printer, I do know at least the Anycubic Mega S, I think on the touchscreen on the front, there is a pause and resume button functionality. Using the touchscreen is a great, fairly simple way of stopping and resuming your printer. But if you're using a different printer or different firmware, you'll need to look up specifics of how that one works. This is a fairly common use case, so there are a lot of very specific instructions out there you can look up. And now I have them both. One is very light, and one is a whole lot heavier. I only filled these cavities up maybe half, maybe 3/4 of the way up. I could have made it heavier, but I just don't think it really needs it. This is plenty of added weight. But it really comes down to the functionality. Let's put them to the test. So here we've got our test prints, and I think it's going to be pretty obvious as soon as I test them out which one has weights in it and which one does not. So I'm going to hang my stockings. Let's test them out. I've got a couple wrenches here. They're pretty standard Craftsman. They're really not that heavy. If I take them and drop them in there, that first one worked. This second one, there's a little bit of force behind it. Oh. That's what happens when you don't put weights in your stocking hangers. Even without any weights down in the stockings alone are almost enough to pull this one off. Whereas this one, it's holding with the whole wrench in there, and it's totally fine. This one works really well. This one, I need to put a book on top. Then it becomes functional. So there's the proof that the weighted one works really well. And that about wraps up day 1 of the 12 prints of Christmas. I will list this print file in the description down below so you can print them out at home, but let me know in the comments down below if you've used weights in your prints or if you have a favorite use case for this. I really love how this technique turns something this print isn't useful without these weights. This is basically worthless, whereas loaded with these weights, it's now totally useful. I also love that I 3D printed these. At the store, there were only silver and gold options. What if I wanted red or green or white? There are so many great options to customize it exactly for yourself. I also like that I made this fairly basic so you can decorate it however you want. You could put letters, shapes, Christmas trees, stars, whatever you want. Maybe some prints we're going to get to later in this week. This wraps up day 1. If you've enjoyed this video, hit that like button down below. It really helps me out. And if you don't want to miss those future episodes, you can hit that subscribe button as well. I hope you guys have an amazing day out there, and I'll see you in the next one.